Hi. We are now going to use fabric to do some sewing, and we are going to learn how to adjust our machine to do different types of stitches. So we're going to be doing 4 different types of stitches. You should have this paper, machine stitching skills, and we will be doing a standard stitch with a back stitch, a basting stitch, a reinforcement stitch, and a zigzag stitch. So there are instructions down here, and I will also show you how to do this. What we are going to do, because when you're sewing a garment, you are always sewing with the edge of your fabric at a certain width away from the needle. If you can see here, here's my 5/8 inch line. That is a normal seam allowance. 5/8 of an inch is a normal seam allowance unless otherwise stated. So I want to watch my fabric along that 5/8 inch line. If you remember during our safety test, I said you don't need to watch the needle because once you push the power pedal, it's going to go up and down, correct? We know that to be true unless something is wrong with the machine. What you do want to watch is you want to watch the edge of your fabric up against this 5/8 inch line. When you start sewing, hold these threads. Sometimes, and I can't tell you when, but sometimes if you don't hold them, the bottom thread gets wrapped up in your bobbin and it's a mess. And then I have to come over and change or fix your machine. So hold both these threads for 4 stitches. Just get in the habit of it. So I'm going to take 4 stitches, approximately 1, 2, 3, 4. And then I'm going to reverse. So this is my back stitch. Mine on my machine is right here. Yours is over farther to the right, and it's on that stitch length control, the one that has the 1, 2, 3, 4 or the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And you're going to push yours up all the way. On this Brothers machine, I push it down. And I'm going to go back to where I began. You never want to start at the very edge of your machine because then the threads get all jammed up. So what am I going to watch? I'm going to watch the edge of my fabric up against that 5/8 inch line. And I'm going to sew straight. And you see I don't have my hands over here because the machine actually, here's my hands, will go pretty straight. So I'm going to go close to the edge but not right on the edge, and then I'm going to back stitch 4 stitches again. And see, now I'm used to the school machines. 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. Take up lever at the top always, because otherwise your stitch hasn't finished below. Pull out your threads, cut this. Cut these threads here. Get used to cutting your threads because I do take off for that. And then I have a very nice, my back stitch at both ends. And what that does is when you're sewing a garment, it holds your seams together. When you put it through the washer and dryer, they won't come undone. So the next stitch I'm going to do, now I can't see my lines. I'm just going to kind of eyeball it about 5/8 of an inch away from where my first one was. And then you're going to take your stitch length control and you are going to move it to the longest line. So you're going to turn your knob so it goes all the way down. Mine has a different way of doing it because it's not Bernina. It's a cheaper Brothers, so I'm not even going to show you how to do it on here. But you're going to twist that, like that back stitching knob. You know how it goes 1, 2, 3, 4 or 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Turn it all the way down till it won't go down any farther, and it's either going to be on a 4 or 5. This stitch is going to go quick, so, and you're not going to backstitch. Again, you're not going to backstitch because we often take a basting stitch out or we use it together and we can't have any knots in it. Get close to the end, but you don't have to go off the end. Again, clip your threads. This back some. You should be able to tell the difference between this normal stitch and this basting stitch. The basting stitch is longer. Then the next one we're going to do is a reinforcement stitch, and we use this on corners or at a V in a V-neck garment. You use it to reinforce a point usually, so that you can clip to the point that the threads of the fabric aren't going to come undone. And so it's going to be super tight. And so you want to turn that knob where your backup or your back stitch lever is, and that's the machine's stitch length control. Turn it all the way up to a 1, not a 0 because it won't go anywhere, but to a 1. Turn mine to a 1. It's going to be really tiny stitches. You do not need to back stitch because they are so tiny, and you'll notice it takes you a lot longer to get to the bottom. Try to keep an even space between these basting threads and your presser foot. Probably the less you handle it, the straighter it will go. And we're going to clip these off. And then I'll show you how close they are. Come on. There we go. Nice. You can see how tight these are. They're awful, awful, awful to have to pick out. Oh, there you can see that basting stitch is longer than that stitch by about 2. These are horrible to pick out, especially black on black, and I've had students accidentally do that where they've reinforced a whole seam and then needed to take it out black on black. Makes me want to cry. So always check your stitch length before you start sewing. We're going to go back to a 2.5, which is where our normal stitch length is. On the newer machines, the 1000s, you're going to just turn that stitch width to a 3. On the old machines, you're going to need to go up to the top, on top of the machine, and move it over just 1, and then change your knob, so that it's at a 3. If you need help with that, first ask a neighbor. First, see if you can figure it out. Second, ask a neighbor. Third, if I'm available, ask me. Don't call my name. Write your name on the board. All right, so here we are. This is going to be our zigzag stitch. So it's going to go like this, and we use this as a seam finish often. I just changed mine a little bit. I haven't done a zigzag on here on my machine in a long time. There we go. So you can see the needle is going back and forth, and it's making that zigzag. You can use it as a decoration. Sometimes if you're sewing a knit and you don't have any other stitches to choose from, that will work. So cut your threads, and then you should have something that looks like that. We have all this extra fabric here, so if any of these are messed up, just go do a new one, and when you turn it in, I'm just going to look for one that is done correctly. Make sure you cut off these threads. staple this to the front of your paper, write your name on your paper, and that's how you'll turn it in. I will circle the numbers that I think correspond with how you did. You don't need to do that, and that'll be your grade. And then we'll move on to the next thing.